welcome to the round table. We got some great guys around this table. I'm honored to be amongst you guys. And so we've got Ryan Montanto, we got Conrad Pulowski, and I think this topic, guys, is probably one of the most important topics that we can really speak to. You know what I mean? Like with Family First Life, there's so much practicality to what we do. Like the mechanics are spoke to in such great detail that it's not you're never cloudy on like how to book an appointment, what an in-home presentation looks like. But when it comes to that attitude behind it, that personal development, I think it's such a big deal. Like growing yourself each and every day. And for me, guys, I know that in the beginning, I had a lot of growth to be had. You know what I mean? I was 19, minimum wage, and I always look at like these lottery winners. They go out, they hit the lottery, and they win all this money, and then after like, I think it's 24 months or something crazy, most every one of them is completely bankrupt. And you can say, well, how is that? Well, it's because they have not grown internally to a level where they can handle that kind of external wealth. And I think Family First Life, you know, we've experienced it where it's so lucrative in this insurance industry where you go out there and make so much money. If you're not growing at a rate that money can start to flow in at, I think that's where self-sabotage starts to take place, right? Where you start shooting yourself in the foot and you're wondering like, gosh, why is that no-sell? Why is this taking place? How did that happen? What is it, you know, all these unfortunate events happen, and it's a lot of times it's self-induced. And so one of the first things that I think I put in place, in fact, I think one of the best things I put in place was a personal growth plan, where every day I said, I know conceptually it makes sense. Like conceptually everybody agrees, like yeah, personal growth is important. But then the practicality, like having a game plan, you know, that takes a good intent and it puts it into practice where we actually see change in our life. And all of a sudden now, for me, I was able to go out there and handle level 7, 8 problems because I was becoming a higher level person. And you know, it's like in the beginning, I couldn't hire anybody. Why? Or everybody I hired I didn't like. Well, because I wasn't the person, like you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. Exactly. And I was like, man, I gotta grow if I gotta keep hiring these kind of people, you know what I mean? So, Ryan, if you could just, you know, kind of touch upon like what does that personal growth plan look like for you and how important has it been for you? Because I mean, you've had some great success pretty quick with Family First Life.
Absolutely. A lot of the personal growth that comes from me is because I come from a firm belief that it's not always the biggest, fastest, the strongest that survives. It's always the one most willing to adapt to a situation. It's coming from the restaurant world and not, you know, ever having anything to do with insurance. I knew nothing about insurance. So for me, adapting is realistically mimicking. I pick out people like yourself that was doing it at a higher level, Mike Killamat. Every time I look around, I try to emulate somebody to get where they're at. And then from that point, then I'll take a look back, see if I've achieved those goals, and then I try to move a little bit forward and maybe pick somebody else. When I first got into it, it was the person I picked to mimic was John Webber. He just had such early success too, and he had a lot of the similar, when he talked to people and how he had, when he talked to people, we had a similar, you know, not background, but we talked and how we verbalized what we wanted to do and where we wanted to go. And actually, if you actually look at it, I'm exactly 1 year behind. I started a year later, but my business mimics it almost 1 year to the date behind.
That's
if
great.
He spent like 20,000 on leads this month, I spent 20,000.
Right.
And he tracks it, and I track it too, so we get to see, and it just keeps going. I also like to talk to people I call like Mike Killamat. I'm always, you know, wanting to hear what he says, what he thinks about my business. I like to always bounce things off of people to where I can get at least a second opinion. Doesn't mean I always use or go with what they would say, but I always like to see what other people would do in the same situation that I'm in, and see if with an outside view looking in, sometimes that helps you. I think that personally helps you grow too, when you use other people to see what sounds the best, what helps, and then you keep going from there. I mean,
I love that. I mean, that's so true. Like, you know, the personal growth a lot of times takes place with you being able to stretch your thought process. And you only can stretch your thought process when you get around people that have a higher level thought process.
Absolutely.
And I think that's probably, you know, when you were talking, right, I was like, God, I didn't even think about that. Reflecting back now, that's probably one of the biggest things that's helped me be successful is being able to get around the right thought process so frequently that I was able to imitate what was in front of me, right? I was able to inspect the way they saw certain situations, and because I had the inspection taking place, right, I'm looking at why they did what they did, how they did what they did, asking good questions about what they did, and in that inspection I start to imitate and duplicate that same kind of thought process. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. And see, with Family First Life, it's such a big pool of people that regardless of your personality, your demeanor, background, viewpoints, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, that makes you feel like you're a good fit with somebody else, there's somebody here that's like that.
Absolutely.
You know, and if it wasn't John Wimmer, it could have been somebody else, you know? Like me early on with sales, Matt Smith, I was like, I get that. I get the way he handles the in-home. I can mimic it like that. And somebody else, I might not be able to. And so that's such a great thing where you've got so many people that you can plug into. And I remember reading this quote a while back, and I was like, this is so true that, you know, it's always, my greatest success has always come from following the footsteps of somebody that's already traveled that path.
Absolutely.
You know, like, hey, I don't need to roll off my leg. You've got one leg. Why did you lose your leg? Can you just show me like where you step so I don't step there? You know, and it's made a big difference. So I love that. Conrad, for you, what would be like some of the practicality of the personal growth? Like what are some things that you think you do on a daily basis that help you grow as a producer, as a business owner, give them some nuggets as far as what does that look like?
Yeah, okay, sure. So, I mean, you talked about when you were young, you had a lot of areas that you thought that you needed to grow. I felt like I had like a stretch in my career because I came on to Family First Life later, and at age 46, my history with personal growth had come from the auto industry, where I really didn't know anything about leadership. The levels of leadership in an archaic industry like that are generally positional leaders, and so I only know that just from my recent development here at Family First Life. But I would say, and then a couple other jobs where I was self-employed, so I was thirsty for self-development. And so when I came to Family First Life, it wasn't that I already had these things to execute on a daily basis, because I hadn't created the kind of wealth and happiness and abundance for my family, because I had really no set of guidance there. I had a certain belief that my wife and I share about actualizing our futures metaphysically, but I had never had this integration of personal development and work. And so when I came upon Sean Mike, his level of transparency, I just, whether it was conscious or unconscious, I was like, well, a guy like that had to have done a certain level of self-development to get to where he is, to be able to be that transparent in a workplace, okay, without being preachy.
Right.
And so I was certainly attracted to that, and just along the way, I was just naturally drawn to a place where I could integrate self-development and a workplace to provide abundance for my family. And so early on, I didn't have that immediate mentorship, but what I did use, and the long answer to your question is, I took all that positivity from the personal producers, top producers. I have calls from late 2014 with Ryan, and of course calls from you, and I've got them on a thumb drive, and I listen to them over and over again. And there aren't too many people that Sean would invite on the call who would be projecting a kind of negativity. I mean, not that we're all immune to those thoughts and patterns along the way, but they're all pretty positive on these national calls. And so I do that constantly to help that positive mindset of just the culture of Family First Life comes through in that training, and it helps me keep my ego in check and maintain a set of consistency that I know you also have in this business. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you look at this business, personal growth, it shows its face a lot more than like in a corporate environment. In a corporate environment like where you came from, Conrad, being an engineer, right? And I had a short run in the corporate environment, pumping septic tanks. But me personally growing every day, it wasn't like I was able to go out and triple my income. Like, man, he could really pump that stuff quick now. I mean, like,
He pumped it quicker.
Yeah, how does that really impact my ability to grow? But in this business, because in this financial industry, there's no lid. There isn't. Like, Ryan will make a 7-figure income this year. You know, Connor, I can see you doing the same thing, and you can say that's a lot. Well, the next year it could be it should grow more, and it should grow more, and so the personal growth, it shows its face so much more in an environment where there's no lid. Now, I think that there's also, for me, there's been things that kind of hinder that personal growth and personal development, almost like baggage that keeps you weighted down. And what I mean by that, it's kind of like when you were talking about the culture of FFL, the more that's in front of you, the more it's harder not to just start to kind of to go into that likeness, right? To start to emulate what you see. It's probably pretty hard, for instance, to complain around the top producers. Like, you just feel awkward. And for me, I was like, man, I got to get into an environment where the things that are going to make me broke and cost me money, where it's like hard to do, because I just feel like an idiot if I do them. You know, I just like feel like I can't complain. Like, do you think anybody can ever like give Sean Mike a call and say, hey man, I just wasn't feeling very good, so I slept in until noon? You know,
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that.
It's not going to go over.
It's not gonna, and the reason being is, and it shouldn't, because it's like, you don't have terminal cancer. What are you really talking about? Because he sees it so, you know, so strongly in that point of view. People know not to do that, and it keeps them doing the things that is really a cancer to their business and to their personal growth. For you, Ryan, what's been some things that you think that you had to kind of you almost had to refine, like you had to go through a refinement process, so to speak, to get to this place where you could grow, whether that was people you were spending time with? What are things that could hold back self-development?
Well, at the beginning, and this kind of build off of what he said, talking about that the leadership where you're doing a positional leadership, it just I had to look more retrospectively. When I first started this, I thought I was better at a leader than I was, because I came from the restaurant business, and I was, you know, it was very positional. I was the owner, I was the manager, you know, so I hired you. I thought I got to do, you did whatever I said. You do this, you do this. And it's funny because when Sean told us, I think it was about 3 years ago, to go ahead and send out, read the 5 levels of leadership with Maxwell, and then kind of ask your agents to rate you 1 through 3. It was amazing, because most of them put me at 1, close position. I had a few 2s, but it was very low. It was definitely different, and kind of looking at it. And so from there, then I knew what I had to fix. So it was easier for me to go back and look and see, how do I develop? But see, the thing is, it's what other people see you as. It's not what you think you are. It's what other people see. I did the same thing at the end of 2018, and I was getting a lot more. Some people did put me at 1, but I had a lot more in that 4 or 5s, because I'm starting to develop some kind of leaders. They're starting to put me in a different, you know, light. So when you're looking at that, it's not more or less what I've done, the change. It's kind of how people perceive me as being more of a leader or helping them out. I think that's changed a lot. That's helped me in more of my personal growth, because I'm a little bit more aware of where I am and how I can help other people if I grow that way.
Man, that's so good, because like, and to that point, Ryan, like most people wouldn't put themselves out there to be able to get that kind of criticism for fear of what if it's so low, and not being able to handle how that would make them feel. And I think that's such a big deal as far as why you've grown so fast, is you don't care. You don't care as far as like the reality of the situation, if it's worse than you thought it really was, because in that awareness, it allows you to personally grow through that and develop yourself. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Because if it wasn't for that test or what have you that you did, you'd been out there doing and behaving in such a way that really wasn't what was taking place. The environment was saying you're at this level with these people, and because you didn't know it, you're not making any adjustments to get to the next level. And so I think for one, that's great. And to that point, like when you look at positional leadership, I think I can't remember if it was Maxwell or if it was Sean, that when you're leading, you know, at a corporate environment, it's like you have to listen. He said the best leaders, true leaders, are the ones that are leading people that don't have to follow. And that in a lot of arenas, that's like a pastor, someone that's leading a church, volunteers. And what we do is we lead independent contractors, right? In some of the other places, they might act like they lead independent contractors, but there's different things those independent contractors have got to sign, right? That keeps them that, you know, kind of, but no, we don't have nothing. The door is wide open. So if we don't lead you correctly, you can walk out the door because it's wide open. We just want to lead you correctly and give you the best possible environment that you never walk out that door. And that puts it back on us where we've got to be true leaders in the truest sense because they don't have to follow.
I agree with
And
that.
so that's
Hold your
great.
feet to the fire too, because
Yeah.
if they get to leave, it's a double-edged sword. Being an independent agent,
Yeah.
you can leave at any time, and I can ask you to leave at any time.
That's right.
So I mean, it keeps people honest. It keeps people real. Keeps them on that apex, on that higher level, or
Yeah.
tries to.
Let me ask you this, Conrad. So as far as like the time that you spend, whether that's reading or affirmations or looking at the day, when do you typically do stuff that leads to growth personally? Is it in the morning? Is it late at night? Is it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
It's the morning. I've always been a morning person. So I get up and I have some meditation incantations that I do in the morning that my wife has encouraged me to do. I haven't always been very consistent with it, but it helps keep my stress level a little bit lower. It always helps to start the day there before plugging into electronics to take moments and meditate, or if you pray, then pray. I've also used hypnosis and really the hypnotist who's kind of a mental coach for me. She we went through a series of exercises, but she's like, look, you understand this. Here's the structure of it, and basically hypnosis is kind of a guided meditation where you can hypnotize yourself through creating certain
You got a lot more
incantations.
belief in yourself than I do. I'd be too scared, man. How are you going? I'm like, hey, why am I barking? I didn't know it was that serious.
And then sometimes it's in the middle of the day. It's it's maybe a prayer to say, Lord, please let me help this family that I'm going to sit down with today. And maybe sometimes I resort to that too much in a rut. But Sean has always said, if something's not working, change it. And
So you do it early in the morning for the most part?
Early in the morning
What
for
does
the
that
most
mean?
part.
Like, what time is that typically at?
like 5:30,
Okay.
I get up, cross my
What about
legs.
you, Ryan? What time?
I'm 6 a.m.
6 a.m.?
Kids and everything. The whole house is up at 6 a.m.
Okay, so you have to be up.
Yeah.
I hear you. I got 4 kids. Like, But and I think in the morning that's the most important time to do it. Now, and I get it. Everybody's different. Some are evening and morning, and I think it's good to do at both. But in the morning, the way I look at it, it's almost like you're fortifying yourself through all those things that you're going to get ready to experience throughout the day. You've already kind of taken that first discipline and said that, hey, early morning, I'm controlling this. I'm not letting this email, this situation, this circumstance dictate my day. I'm saying, hey, day, I'm in control here, and I'm going to start that cornerstone discipline early in the morning. I think that leads to other disciplines throughout the day. As a producer, dialing the phones, booking appointments. Man, I intend to do this. Well, why is your intention being actualized? Well, because you wake up and you're putting out fires all day. You're not taking control of the day by saying, hey, in the first hour, I'm going to go through a regimen and develop myself. And I think that's one of the biggest things that helped me. Going back to that plan, like not just saying I'm going to do it, but having a plan, like waking up and doing the gratitude. I was talking to Mike Hill, and he said, man, when I'm laying in bed before I get up, I'm thinking like, God, this is going to be a good day. It's going to be a great day. This is why I'm excited, because that just gets you moving, right? It gets you thinking the right thing, opposed to in the beginning, especially for new producers, you're battling a lot of like doubt, disbelief. You're looking at the past, and sometimes you're focused so much on the past and the identity that past is providing for you that you can't take steps in the direction that's going to lead you to the freedom you want. And so you're in this rut, right? And I think the biggest things that help diminish that doubt, disbelief, discouragement is taking that first habit early in the morning and developing. And so I think like in meditation, prayer, like gratitude though, right in the beginning. I think that's one of the things that really changed it for me. And no matter what storm I'm going through, it allows me to pull out the good in everything, right? And I think that paradigm shift is saying like, this happened to me. Like, oh man, that took place. And I think a lot of times because of a wrong thought process, we put things in the expense column that should be in the income column. Meaning that like when I had 9 no-shows that one day, I was like, this sucks. But when I flipped and said, now what can I take from this? That 9 no-shows allowed me to increase my show ratio by 15% from there on out, because I was able to, like you said, understand through self-awareness that, hey, I'm only at a level 1 with this. But I had to have that happen to get there. So is that an expense or an asset? No, it seemed like an expense, but I said, this is a good thing. This had to happen to me to get to the next level, then it proceeds at a good thing. I think that starts with gratitude early in the morning, and then it goes into prayer. Like I pray for 10 minutes out loud. You know, meditation's great. I just feel like, you know, if I'm praying to the person that created me, that just, it works out a little better. But prayer and then affirmation. And see, I think that what I did in the beginning, guys, I don't know if you did the same thing. My affirmation was like, I'm a 20K producer. And I'd be like, fool, you ain't no 20K producer. You were like 2K last week, you know? And so it was affirming like the result, and I had to start declaring the activity. Like I book 20 appointments a week. Because you know what I mean? I'm a great dialer. I book 20 appointments a week, you know? And starting to have those kind of things that you start speaking over yourself. When you're getting ready to book some appointments, it sounds corny. But I mean, all the way up, I mean, for years, you know, I was writing 300,000-400,000 a year, and I'd be in the mirror like, I love making phone calls. I love making phone calls. People need this help. They ask for help. When they die, they're gonna need this. This is the most important thing they could ever get. I just started saying that stuff because it put me in the right frame of mind to do an activity that I didn't enjoy. You know, so I think affirmations are crucial, right? Absolutely. Visualizing the day that you want to see happen, like the way you want to see it happen, seeing it all play out.
Completing the task. If I can draw upon a story that Sean White has from one of the calls that I used to listen to, and still listen to it over and over again, is his time. It was time when he went to the police academy and he had to make his rack, and he hated making his rack. And he went to the sergeant in charge, and he said, I don't understand why I need to make my rack every day. And he said, son, you're missing the point. He said, making your rack every morning allows you to take that first task of the day and complete it and have a sense of accomplishment. And so if you can start your day like that, whether it's with a prayer or a task that you've completed that you're positive about, it's just like the call that you had the entire last year. It set the stage for the week for us. And thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Paul. So that doing something like that in the morning is very important. So, that's something that, so whether it's lifting weights in the morning, do something positive for yourself, a sense of accomplishment to set the stage for going out and helping families.
I love it. That's a great story, by the way. So Ryan, to the point, looking at the people that you'd reach out to, Wetmore, the different, influencers for you, right? And I still believe that, like, the voice you believe the most is really going to determine the future you experience. I mean, I think that's what you've seen. Mm-hmm. You believe Wetmore's voice so much, and like you said, your business year after year, it's like it's right there on that same trend. Mm-hmm. It's because you're experiencing the future because you believe what he's saying. What are some good questions to ask the people that you're reaching out to, the people that have stepped through that path, that are where you want to be? What are good questions that you ask to help you grow personally from the answers that they provide?
Well, like you said, one of the first questions I like to ask people is, what would they not do? Because I don't want to make the same mistake. I mean, what was your biggest, not failure, but what would you not do again in 2018 if you had to do it all over? I actually asked Wetmore this yesterday. I said, in 2018, what is something that you would have not have done, you would have stayed away from, that it didn't make you, because his goal was to hit 1 million a month by about by the beginning of the fourth quarter instead of at the end this month. So I said, what kept you from your goal? And I know it's more of a negative thing, but I turned it into a positive because it's a pitfall since I'm, tracking so close and almost exactly where he's at. What I want to be able to do is do it, 3 to 4 months before he did, if I can do that. And it's the same thing when I try to give that to the same agents that are looking for the same thing. Like if it took me 2 years to get to vice president level, I want somebody to do it in a year. But I think we can all learn from what people, especially even when you get up, like I'm sure yourself have had, because when you're blazing trails, it's easier to make some mistakes and then have everybody else learn from them. So those are one of the big things I try to do, is try not to make similar mistakes. Like when I talk about mimicking, it's like I don't want to mimic poor, poor
mimic
things.
The right steps.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's one of the big things I look at is what can I do differently that I would stay away from. And sometimes, maybe it's something that you have to go through in order to grow. Maybe it's not a step that you can, alleviate. So I mean, sometimes you have to look at that. So sometimes you have to look at that too. It's to have that. We're talking about personal growth. Sometimes you do have to have that. Something that puts you down, brings you down a little bit, so you have something like like Rocky that can come out. Yeah. The underdog approach to it. So
I think nowadays everybody's trying to get swole, right, without getting sore. It's like
It's looking like
you
that.
got to go do the activity. You got to go through it to grow. You know, that personal growth thing is not one of those things you sit back and just say, hey, I'm going to read this book and meditate for 5 hours and I'm going to grow. No, you've got to go out there and do that combined with massive activity. And a lot of times that activity of failing forward, that provides just as much personal growth as anything else, right? It goes kind of hand in hand. What about you, Connor? What would be a good question that you ask, you know, somebody that you're, you know, they blaze that trail, you're trying to kind of follow that footsteps to get to where they're at, somebody that's working with you on that stuff. What's a good question that you would ask them to help yourself grow into their thought process?
Somebody I'm working with that I'm trying to get to their level there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would ask them their routines. I think it starts from the routines, like you said. You know, how do they start the day in the morning? I would learn that. You know, for me, I'm trying to get to board members, so you know, I'll ask, you know, how they. I asked Mike Killamet last year, you know, how he communicates with his agents. He whiteboards and sets up kind of a bubble chart of who he talks to multiple times a week, who gets a text, and as they're moving, and so that kind of organization helped me understand his routine. I think that's it. Right? A lot of maintaining that consistency, keeping the proper mindset, keeping the ego at bay, speaking things to existing, actualizing, all comes from a set of routines that Dave Anderson even spoke about yesterday. And so I would ask them about their routines.
I love it. That's great. And, you know, I think a great question too that's just so simple is just like, you know, hey, why'd you do that? Like, why'd you do that? You know, when that took place, why did you do that? Or when the client said that and you responded like that, like, why did you do that? And it's asking why so you can get into the thought process behind it. Because for me, the way I thought day one, it was kind of interesting because of the association I had getting started in this business, right? A lot of my refinement I had to do to let go, to go up, right? To let go, to grow, was the people that I was hanging out with, you know? Hanging out with guys that, you know, remind you of Stifler from American Pie or the guy from Van Wilder from, you know, that they're not going to typically lead you to a 7-figure income. But after a year, I got around them, I'm like, wow. I mean, they're like, dude, you're different. And that was a compliment because there was so much growth that had to take place. And the way I was able to subsidize the thought process was seeing the thought process of guys like Sean Mike and asking those questions, because that why question, you get to hear his thought process. That's all it is. Everything that comes after, like, hey, why did you do that? It's now the thought process behind it. And if I can continue to hear it and hear it and hear it, I'm eventually going to go in and subsidize my thought process with his thought process. And now my behavior is going to mimic the thought process of the person I want to be at, you know, where I want to get to. And that behavior leads to action, action leads to results. And all of a sudden you're sitting back like, wow, how did I get to this place? Wow, I worked real hard and I just associate a lot. You know, it's not that deep as far as being able to put all that together and see that take place. Any last minute, you know, statements or feedback on the topic, you know, personal development? I think this has been great, and it's such a great topic to cover. Anything else you guys want to kind of add to it as we wrap up here?
I mean, I'd ask you a question. What are you going to do in 2019 that you think you'd be different than 2018?
I think the big difference is going to be more intentionality to picking out the 3 people that I want to spend more time asking questions like this. I think like anything, you know, you don't realize you get away from doing the things that works, you know, day in, day out, when you get to a level where you feel like, you know, I've reached a place where, hey, it feels good, you know, and instead of stomping on the neck when you're going for the jugular or putting the pedal all the way down, you kind of step back and say, hey, you know, I feel pretty good. And so really battling complacency and stuff like that can take root if I continue to ask people questions that are at this place that I want to continue to grow to. So I think a lot of what we spoke about, you know, a lot of times when I'm speaking, it's like I'm speaking to myself, like, this is what I got to do. You know, this is not me speaking at anybody. This is a lot of times me speaking at myself, saying, I need to identify, spend more time with guys like Sean Mike and Mike Killiman and these different people really growing and asking questions like, hey, why do you do that? Right? Because in order to go from 16 million as a group to 33 million, I would be ignorant to think that my same thought process is going to get there. And I think that's for everybody that's watching this. You know, in order to go from where you're at to where you want to go, you've got to change, right? Internal growth is always going to be preceding external growth. And a lot of times you forget the fact that it doesn't happen in a day, But if every day you take control of your day and personally grow, you're intentional about the conversations you have, you intentionally let go of conversations that don't lead to growth personally, spiritually, financially, the people that are not wanting you to go out there and be successful, if you can let go of that stuff and press in, I promise you guys, like 30, 60, 90 days, a year from now, it's not easily seen in a day, but the compound effect will take place, and all of a sudden you look up and say, wow, this looks a lot better. I'm a lot different. I think a lot better, and things will change. So, hey, pleasure, talking with you guys. Good stuff.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.